Bitcoin's triangle, we are at a point with the Bitcoin cycle where something should happen. Either we're going to get this legitimate breakout and we're going to have Bitcoin go off to the races, legitimate breakout above 69,000, or we're going to see a turn and rejection off of this area. But the cycle is here, and it's telling us either we're going to get this big move up or we're going to get this reversal back down here. This cycle's given us this turn down here, and then a sharp continuation of that, downward move, sharp continuation here, and then the reversal back up here, the sideways move, but then this move back up right here once we broke through this area here. So again, here we are breaking through this area, meaning we're going to either get a continuation going forward, dating a bull market, or we're going to get a reversal. Again, Bitcoin at the 69,000 area at the moment of truth. Okay, Bitcoin is in the Saturday session right now. It's up about 0.5%, continuing to hover just under the 10 period, just over the 20. The red line is the 10, the blue line is the 20. Bitcoin is going sideways. It has formed a symmetrical triangle. Symmetrical triangles can be continuation patterns or they can be reversal patterns. It could be either one. Again, if Bitcoin breaks above 69,000 and remains there, then that's going to be bullish. Historically, it has been when you've broken above overhead resistance and stayed there. What happened in 2021 is we broke above overhead resistance and we reversed. So which is it going to be this time? Bitcoin forming a top. Even if we break out, it still might form a top similar to that of the two peaks in 2021, as I've talked about in great length and detail. The trick is getting above 69,000 and staying above it. Right now, we've dropped back below it again. We got above 69,000 and closed there with this bar right here and cleared the cloud, cleared the 78.6 Fibonacci ever so slightly, and then turned right back down. We dropped nearly 10%, about 9.6%. We're rebounding back up, and now we have this potential triangle. Now the triangle could be, if it is a reversal, it could be that we get a lower high and a lower low, and we've gotten rejection at the 78.6 Fibonacci, and we are losing the 50 period. We start coming back and testing the 100 period. Again, as long as Bitcoin is above this 100 period moving average, that's positive. You start taking out that 100 period moving average, that's going to be negative for Bitcoin. But right now you're in a triangle. So which way are we going to see the resolution? Is it going to break up or is it going to break down as we move closer and closer towards the apex of the triangle where those two trend lines will eventually meet? We'll get a upward or downward resolution, a break to the upside or a break to the downside. And again, the signals are going from bullish to bearish, back to bullish right here, then back to bearish, and really just showing that we are going sideways. So whichever way we break, if we break this upward boundary right here, currently that's at the 70,000 area. We got rejection at the 71,000 area, just overthrowing our 78.6 Fibonacci there. If we turn it down, and that means we got to get back above the 10 and stay above it and break this trend line. But if we get rejection off the 10, or we go up to the trend line and get rejection, you break this trend line, then you're looking at this 65,000 area. You break that, then our support zone comes into play right here, which is this low right here, and this low over here at the 60,000 area. And really, between 60,000 and 65,000, you've got that support, and you've got your 50 period moving average coming in right around that 64,000 area. So again, the triangle is showing that we are going sideways, and the $64,000 question is, do we break above 69,000 and remain there, or do we see this high over here hold and we get a lower high and now a lower low, and we come back and take out this low? So which is it? Again, we'll be looking for a break up or down of this triangle maybe by next week. I talked about the weekly candlesticks. Again, we have this topping tail at 73,800, just under 73,800, but it was never confirmed as this doji looking spinning top candlestick formed. We broke below it, and I told you at 73, 72,000 we were going to get this quick flash crash style move. We did. We ended up dropping nearly 18%, but then we rebounded, and I told you that we had a trend line right there at that level, and we had the trend line on the 4-hour chart there and the daily chart. We had our 200 period moving average on the 4-hour chart. We bounced off those levels. We talked about that, and I told you that because there's no confirmation in the weekly time frame, we still may try to exceed 73,000 and still go higher. If we go higher, you could still have a top that looks very similar to the tops in 2021, as I've talked about at great length and detail. Right here, we've rebounded back up. Got a possible hanging man candlestick if we close with a candle looking something like this, but that would mean candlestick would have to be confirmed with a push below it, and that would mean a potential lower high if that candlestick plays out. So again, we won't get the close until Sunday, so we'll be watching the candlestick get an upward resolution. Say we get a hangman candlestick, but we get an upward resolution starting off next week, rather than a hangman. Again, could be a bottoming tail like this. If we get a legitimate breakout, and again, this red line is the 69,000 area. We have here in the weekly time frame this horizontal resistance that has been taken out on a closing basis, but it was done on extremely light volume, so it's not very convincing. That doesn't mean it can't be a legitimate breakout, but it's going to be harder for it to be if the volume doesn't pick up, and if we go above 69,000, it has to pick up. We were watching to see if we would close above 69,000. We did. Over here at 73,000, we didn't. We dropped back down below 69,000. And then we started to sell off and dropped nearly 18%, rebounded back up here. So again, are we getting a legitimate breakout? We are. We're going to push above the 69,000 area and never look back. So we're watching this weekly chart closely. Or are we going to get something that looks like this? Where we have these tops. Here we tried to break out. We sold off 15%. Back up, tried it again, it failed again, and then you got your reversal. You dropped 53%, rebounded, everybody thought it was over, and then we saw another 63% drop from that lower high, and the bottom fell out of Bitcoin. Which is this? Is this a legitimate breakout? And if it is, then we get above this 69,000 area and we never look back. It's off to the races. But if we have a reversal here and we struggle, then there's the risk of a triple top right here. And again, very, very common pattern. This is a similar pattern to what Amazon formed with the bursting of the dot-com bubble. Formed a peak, it sold off sharply. Everybody thought it was over. We rebounded back up, sold off, and it went back up again. But it ended up coming down and collapsing, forming a triple top. Do we have that here with Bitcoin? Or do we get a legitimate breakout? Now, again, as I've said, if we break above this level, that's going to be bullish. That's going to be a sign of strength. But the thing is you can't just break above it and then drop back down. You've got to be able to break above 69,000 and hold above it. And that is the key. And so we're at the moment of truth. What is going to happen here as we hover? Do we form a top and then turn? I told you we could dance around here for weeks. But we're watching the triangle. Do we get a legitimate break to the upside, or do we get a lower high, lower low, and a breakdown, a reversal triangle there on that daily chart? As I've talked about, every time Bitcoin has come up to resistance and broke it out, it's had a moonshot. Went up here to resistance, boom. Bear markets, again, when we came up and we got above that level, then you had this big move up. We had the bear market here. Sold off, and in the new bull market we had this peak, sold off again with the pandemic, first correction there of the new bull cycle there, but got above it, never looked back, got above this level, never looked back, up until we got right here. We broke out, attempted it, it failed, and then we attempted it again, and it reversed up 78%. So which is it? Is it going to be one of these moves here where we get this big surge, get a legitimate breakout, or is it going to be reversal? Here, we hit this level, we pull back, and then we broke out. Here we hit this level, and we've overshot it now. You could see something like that, but the question right now is this going to get a legitimate breakout? And if it is, we'll be bullish. If it gets rejection here, then that will be bearish. So we'll be watching which way the triangle breaks, and even if the triangle breaks up, you get up here, you've still got to be able to stay here without coming back down. You got to be able to stay above 69,000. If you could stay above 69,000, volume trends increase, then you have a legitimate breakout. Bitcoin is at the moment of truth here, and I keep showing you this chart because, again, is it going to get a triple top, or is it going to get a breakout like we've had here, 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 whoop, right there? They're going to get a reversal like what we had over here. Now, I just want to show you the Moonboy Oscillator. The Moonboy Oscillator formed a divergence, and we got that top at 73,000. I talked about that at the 73,000 area, that we're going to get a flash crush down move back towards the trend line of support in the 200 period on the 4-hour chart. I talked about that, and I told you to be watching those levels. That's support. We went back to those levels, and we bounced. Now, if we get an upward resolution to the triangle, because again, bouncing up the trend line, we are bouncing up the 200, we could see a divergence develop here, very similar to what we had over here at the January peak. If we can't get traction back up and we have a downward resolution of the triangle and we start moving to test or take out the 50 period here, then again, we could just roll right back down here and continue downward. We move to extremes again. So I'm watching the Moonboy Oscillator here. Does it turn back up? It's curling back up, but does it turn back up and we form the divergence or get the upward resolution? If you do, then we have the triangle measurement. If we get a downward resolution, then this continues to drop. Now, I've taken the measurement of the triangle from the high down to this low right here, and if we get an upward resolution of the triangle, depending on where we break out, and again, this assumes we go a few more days and break out in both of these scenarios. If we do it sooner, then the measurement would be a little bit higher and a little bit lower, because you would be at the different levels of the upper or the lower boundary. So again, depending on where we break out, if we broke out in a few days next week, then we would be looking, and this would take us early next week, the measurement would take us up towards 84,000. Now again, between the 87,000 and 90,000 area, there's a trend line from these two peaks over here, and depending on where we come into contact with it, 87,000. If we take longer to reach it, maybe 90,000. So again, if we do have an upward resolution of the triangle, it would measure to 84,000, which would be just shy of this trend line right here, right around the 87,000 area or so on the Bitcoin weekly chart. So the upward resolution of the consolidation would measure to 84,000, a downward resolution, and again, it would be a little bit higher if we broke out immediately here. It would be more towards 85,000 or so. So it just depends. Or if we took longer to break out, moving closer to the apex, it would be lower, closer towards the 80 to 81,000 level. So it really depends on where we break out, as far as the measurement. But here, again, if we broke out in a few days, then we're looking at going back to the 100 period moving average here, and you're looking at going down to the 52,000 area, 51,000, 52,000 range right in here, the high 51,000 area or so here, if we get a downward resolution of the triangle. But if you do get the downward resolution, you have a lower high and a lower low, and then this area right here would be resistance. If we broke up the triangle through the resistance zone then that area becomes support between 71,000 and 73,000. So again, the support and resistance levels depending on which way we break with our triangle. Now, if we did have an upward resolution and cleared the 10-period moving average, cleared the trend line, we'd be clearing the little cloud here, and the signal would change from sell back to buy. Right now, again, it's going from sell to buy to sell, and it's showing, again, we're just going sideways. So we're looking for a resolution up or down. Does we get a reversal here immediately and stop making new highs, or is it still in a topping process and we go higher and then it fails? Or we get a legitimate breakout, we bust up above 69,000, never look back. We've tried to bust up above 69,000. Initially it failed, and then we got it, and we got that close above 69,000 last week, but it was on extremely light volume. And again, we had Easter week, we had spring break, and well, we got a close above 69,000. It was on extremely light volume, so it's not very convincing. So if we get a legitimate breakout, we've got to see that the volume trends pick up. If we're to break above this level and hold above it, then that would be a bullish event for Bitcoin. That would be a very positive thing if we can stay above this level and not drop back below it. If we get rejection here, then Bitcoin is in serious trouble. And if it drops back below 20-week moving average or the 100-day moving average in the daily time frame, then it's at risk of a reversal and a triple top. So triangle, will it have a downward resolution or an upward resolution? Now, Bitcoin is stalling so far at 2 standard deviations of Bitcoin's average price, which is right here at the 37,000 area at the moment. We got above the 1618 standard deviation, pushed up through that level. We were getting rejection at it. We pushed up through it. Now we're stalling here at the 2 standard deviation. If we get a legitimate breakout of the triangle, then we would be moving. Our target level would be, again, this is, mind you, Bitcoin getting a legitimate breakout, closing above 69,000 and never looking back, and bring this level on convincing volume. So far, we had a break above 69,000 on light volume. That would be moving to 3 standard deviations, which would be the currently at the 115,000 level. If we get rejection here and we start losing the 1618 standard deviation here, then Bitcoin is at risk of a reversal. If we clear this level and again get a legitimate breakout, then 3 standard deviations comes as a target level if you get a legitimate breakout. That assumes you have a bull market. If we get rejection here, then you have a possible expanded flat where you get this sell-off, you get a rebound that moves just above this area, but then you turn back down and you go back and you take out this area. That's called an expanded flat with Elliott wave. Get a legitimate breakout here, then got to hold above 69,000. This would be the area, and it's rising, so it would be higher than the 115,000 area if we get a legitimate breakout and validate a bull market. Now, here's a triangle with the Pring parameter in the 4-hour time frame. Now, again, we broke back below the 200. Previously, we had bounced off of it. We bounced off the trend line. I'll show you that on another chart. Remember, we were talking about a bounce here, dropping down to the 200, dropping down to the trend line. Told you if we can get traction off those levels, you can get a bounce. You break those levels, that would be bearish. Bounced off the 200, the trend line, the parameter firmed up. Now here we are again. Is it going to go negative? And we start getting a bigger drop and moving towards the 400 period and seeing the start of a reversal, or do we firm up here and get an upward resolution to the triangle and move above 73,000, either get a legitimate breakout or a reversal with the topping process? So just something to be paying attention to, which way our triangle breaks. But let me bring this up closer. And why this is important is, again, when Pring parameter, when you get above the 200 period moving average, and the 50 gets above it, Pring parameter goes positive and Bitcoin is rising and good things are happening. When you drop back below the 200 and pre-parameter goes negative, then bad things are happening on Bitcoin. And here we got back above the 200, 50 got back above it, pre-parameter went positive. We've been positive after we hit our 100 period moving average in the daily time frame at the January low. Signals turn back to bullish. But as I talked about earlier, since the peak here, we saw signals go bearish, and some signals remain bearish. Others are going back and forth from bullish to bearish. Signals bullish, some signals bearish. You got a mixed bag of signals because Bitcoin is going sideways with the triangle. So we need a resolution for the triangle. Do we get a legitimate breakout above 69,000 or rejection at it? 4-hour chart here. Now I want to bring this 4-hour chart up close so you can see this, and let me just bring this up here. You can see again, here's our trend line. We talked about the trend line. This is our linear scaling. We talked about the trend line on the linear scaling. Again, we hit that trend line. We hit the 200. We bounced there, but we came up and we made a lower high, got back above the 50. The 50 failed to cross below the 200. It turned back up, but then we dropped back below the 50, back below the 200, came back down, and now you have this boundary for a potential triangle, reversal or continuation, whichever way we break. But as what happened here is came back down, we broke the blue trend line. So now you have this break of the trend line, and then we attempted to backtest it. We actually overthrew it and hit our 50 period and got rejection there off of that 50 period a couple of times. And here we are stalling at the broken trend line, the blue trend line there, and the 50 period, and we had dropped below the trending cloud, and we're stalling there at the cloud at the moment anyways, kind of right at it. So the 50 is about to cross below the 200. Now, if the 50 crosses below the 200 and price gets rejection here at the 50 and 200, and we're testing those moving averages here in the 4-hour time frame, but if we get rejection here and we see the 50 drop below the 200, and they're about $120 apart right now at that 68,000 area, the 200 is just above 60,000, around 68,042, and the 50 period is at 68,164. So they're right around $120 apart. And if we get rejection here, then they can get a bearish death cross. If that happens, holding below the 200, getting a back test, getting a bearish cross, and you get a downward resolution, then that's going to be bearish for Bitcoin. Then you've got your 400 period down here at the 60,000 area. And if, again, we take that out, then the measurement, again, of the triangle and takes us back down just beyond that 100 period moving average in the daily time frame. Bitcoin follows a 100 period moving average. When you're above it, good things are happening. When you're below it, bad things are happening. It marks, it really defines whether Bitcoin is in a bullish or bearish phase. So just the triangle right here, which way are we going to break? But you are at risk of getting a death cross. And even if we get a death cross, again, it could just be signaling we're going sideways. You get a death cross and you don't break down, you get an upward resolution, it could quickly turn back to bullish. You get a death cross, we get a downward resolution, then it can remain that way, and you can get your breakdown and move towards the 100 period moving average towards 51 or 52,000. So I'll be watching this triangle, and I'll be watching this 4-hour chart, and we should get crossover probably here within next few 4-hour bars, maybe here over the weekend. Like I said, even if we get a death cross, it could just mean we're going sideways. So it's really the next move for Bitcoin is going to be determined by which way we break here on this triangle. And triangles can be reversal or continuation patterns. The next break is going to be very, very important. Bitcoin bounced over here as we thought. It turned over here as we thought. Stalled at the 78.6 Fibonacci. Now we continue the consolidation. So we'll be watching which way we get a break once we get the resolution of the triangle. Now, as Bitcoin is going sideways in a triangle formation, which could be a reversal triangle or a continuation triangle, we don't know, whichever way we break out, dollar has broke out of a bull flag. Okay, and now it's pulled back to the 200 period. The 50 got above the 200, which, again, this could be problematic for the Bitcoin breakout in that you're getting a golden cross on the dollar daily time frame. Now, as the dollar has pulled back, to the 20 period, and that's where the 20 period is the blue line right there, and we're at the 200, and again with the 50 just above it, bottoming tail there on Thursday with a little hammer candlestick, and then we rose up, got a little tail here at the 10 period, which could be an inverted hammer, a bullish, back-to-back reversal, or it could be bearish in that we get a bigger pullback, and Bitcoin gets an upward resolution of the triangle. So again, we'll be watching the dollar. Is this an inverted hammer, or is it a topping tail in the form of a shooting star that gives us a bigger sell? But you did get a bullish candlestick the day before in the form of a hammer off of the 200 period moving average. So I'm watching the dollar closely because the dollar broken the downtrend. That could be problematic for Bitcoin going forward. Bitcoin has a negative correlation with the dollar. There are periods of decoupling. More often than not, there is a longer term negative correlation. And the Bitcoin monthly chart is right here at the 20-month moving average. If we clear this level, then again, that would be problematic for Bitcoin. But when Bitcoin topped in 2021, it was when the dollar cleared that 20-month moving average. Bouncing off support here. If the dollar gets a bigger pullback in the daily time frame, it could consolidate here further, help Bitcoin for the short term. But if we see the dollar push above the 20-month moving average here, if we see the dollar continue to hold above the 200 and get traction off of it in the daily time frame, that could be problematic for Bitcoin. After the dollar broke out the previous week, we broke out of this downward trend right here. This downward trend, we've stalled at overhead resistance here, and that's given us a pullback or a back test. If we bounce off the 200 in the daily and we clear this overhead resistance, then again, it would be problematic for Bitcoin. Over here, when we broke out of horizontal resistance after breaking the downward trend line, right here is where out of the dollar took place. We saw Bitcoin top out, did go a little higher, 69,000, and then it topped out. But with that breakout, we saw NASDAQ peak, and we saw the Bitcoin price peak out. So again, be watching, because we have now the breakout of the downtrend, and if we break overhead resistance, then that would be problematic for Bitcoin. We do have a similar pattern here with the break of the downtrend and overhead resistance, very similar to what we had over here. And it was a break of this trend line that gave us the first Bitcoin top. It was a break of overhead resistance after the consolidation that gave us the second Bitcoin top in 2021.